30th anniversary of Expo 88 with a special live outside broadcast of this program at South Bank. We're kicking off with a sausage sizzle at 12:30. And I'll be looking around me at the South Bank parklands, marvelling at the lush greenery, the gardens that I've taken for granted. I was born in 87, so I never really made it to Expo 88, but I have it. I've been told on many, many occasions that the landscaping that you would have seen at Expo, well, I won't say that it was better than, or will I? Because I've got the man across from me right now who created the landscape of Expo 88. Lawrie Smith, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Great to be here.
So what was better, the gardens then or the gardens now?
Oh, they're very different, and they're both, I've got to say, they're really both amazing and really excellent, because for Brisbane to have an ongoing legacy of South Bank after our Expo, it's really unique and wonderful. When I visited other expos around the world post-Expo, they didn't do what we did. And so we've really set the standard there by keeping the whole ambience of Expo going for us as people of Brisbane.
And Lawrie, honestly, that's what I've enjoyed about this process, because I love Brisbane. I've proudly been a Brisbaneite for years. I wasn't born here, but it's definitely my home. And I've taken a lot of the legacy of Expo for granted, including the South Bank Parklands. It's a place I like to take my toddlers whenever I have visitors up from other states. I'll take them to South Bank. Before Expo, South Bank was what?
Well, before it was wharves and old derelict buildings, warehouses and the like. They were cleared off the site. It became a lawn for a few years before Expo, and there were a half a dozen historic buildings there, which are still there today because they were preserved and they were used in the Expo in different ways for hotels and offices and things. And we built Expo on that basis. Yeah, it was just absolutely a wonderful thing to do.
So describe for me your job, your brief. You're a landscape architect.
Yes.
You were the man with the plan. How did you come up with it?
Right, okay. Well, the thing I remember most is that when I was given the job to do it by Sir Lou Edwards, he said to me, I want this Expo to be the greenest exposition ever, and I want it to be as green on the first day and colourful as it is on the last day, and every day in between. Can you do it? And I said without thinking, yes, Sir Lou, I'll do it. Yeah.
Oh, the thing!
And I like to think a lot of people have told me that we did it. And it did create a lot of interest and a lot of initiatives, like you've suggested, that came out of Expo for the first time, because it was one of those projects that you had a wonderful budget, a wonderful client who believed in everything that you sort of came up with, and you could make it happen. And it was great because we were creating for Brisbane a place on the international stage.
There are a couple of Facebook groups that are devoted to Expo 88, including one dedicated to the anniversary. And we've been sharing a few snippets of some of the memorabilia that people have been sharing on social media via the ABC Radio Brisbane Facebook page. And superstar producer Annie Pappalardo has been receiving an abundance of emails from folk getting excited about the anniversary on Monday. You've brought along some fantastic pictures of what the gardens looked like. But can you, for me now on radio, describe what it looked like? What were the gardens of Expo like?
Okay, the most important thing was we had to create a whole character from one end of the site to the other that said, this is a major international event that's being held in Australia to celebrate our bicentenary. That was the important thing. And within that, we had to say, because all of our visitors from around the world had to see what Australian landscape was like, but then it was divided into a series of precincts all along. And each precinct, like the Pacific precinct, the European precinct, the New Zealand precinct, and so on, each one had its own particular landscape character and plant material. And so that as you walked from precinct to precinct, pavilion to pavilion, it was like walking into a new country from every one. But within that, Australia was percolating right through. Yeah.
And what sort of plants were you using to create that? Because I'm thinking, there was a European boulevard, so that was deciduous trees and so forth. Tell me, what were some of the plants that you were using?
Well, I mean, that's true. We tried to create that character. Now, take Canada, for instance. So we had, you can't grow Canadian maples here. The climate's wrong, but we can grow liquid ambers, which look very much the same. And the conifers that they have, we put our Australian hoop pines in. So you had this pine and maple character for for Canada. And in the Pacific Lagoon, that huge, wonderful lagoon there, that had about 1,000 or 1,200 palm trees and all of the South Pacific character plants that were there, and the same with all of the precincts. And New Zealand was one that was absolutely amazing with these huge, big carry pine trunks that were in there that people used to queue amongst and play amongst. And so it was... There was more than 2 or 3 million plants that went into the site, and it was just an amazing thing. A 5-year process of getting all of that plant material produced in the nurseries and made ready to bring to site for opening day and every day thereafter.
Lawrie Smith is with you. He is the man who created all of the gorgeous gardens that you might have enjoyed if you were a visitor to Expo 88. The 30th anniversary of the opening day is on Monday. Tell me, though, about the epiphyte forest.
Right, yes. Now, that was one of the gems of Expo, I believe. It was in the precinct surrounding the Queensland Pavilion. Now, one of the things that's most notable of Queensland is our rainforest that's right up and down the coast. But nature takes 1 million years or more to create a rainforest.
So inconvenient when one is planning an event.
Yes, and I only had, a couple of years to do that. So how do you do it? So we decided, right, we're going to build 60 poles. We put in 60 steel poles up to 16 metres high, and we had a series of cylinders that went around each one, and they sort of towered up above the ground. And each one of those was then filled with sphagnum moss and then planted up with orchids and ferns and epiphytes and all sorts of things. And into that, we had irrigation system, fogging and all sorts of things. So those were prepared 2 or 3 years ahead of time, grown on beautifully, lushly in the nurseries, brought them to site, and we lowered them down with cranes over the top of these 60 poles and created this rainforest. Because when you walk through a rainforest, what do you see most? It's the trunks of the trees with all of the ferns on them and so on. And in that, then we had fogging by night. We had fog that went around. We had bird sounds in there, and it was under one of the big sun sails, and at night we'd project images of the rainforest canopy on that huge super screen that changed, and so it was just like being in a rainforest.
Magic. I mean, that is really beautiful. I'm absolutely bummed that I never got to go there. We'll try and do what we can to recreate some of the magic on
it'd be great to put that in, yes.
So Lawrie, I understand 2 things. From your wonderful work, we now see evidence of some of the ideas that you demonstrated in planter boxes, on council planting buildings, on apartment towers, people's fancy architectural properties, the green wall.
Yes.
So that had its genesis at Expo 88?
Yes, through this epiphyte forest, because people, before then, you didn't really think about doing those sorts of things, using technology, because if you remember the theme of World Expo 88...
Wait, don't tell me, leisure and technology.
Exactly.
Yes!
So
I have been paying attention.
Good on you. So everything I did, I tried to bring technology into it, and so with that epiphyte forest, it was very technological. It was a technological expression of rainforest, and that's what we're doing today around Brisbane with the green walls, because they're doing the same thing that we did then, and it's all automated, all computerized, and that's why they look so good. But the average person at home can do that too in a simpler way.
Brilliant. Lawrie Smith, you're pretty famous, given that you did create the gardens for Expo 88, one of the biggest, if not the biggest event to ever hit Brisbane. But I understand that another famous name is attached to some of your work, Steven Spielberg, the American film director.
Where'd you find that out? Yeah.
Confirm the story, Lawrie. What happened?
Well, as part of Expo, we had a playground, which I designed, called the Senses Playground, which was testing all of our human senses in a very playful way for kids and adults, kids of all ages. I had combed the world and I found something in Hollywood and had to go over there, and it just so happened I was able to take my teenage son with me, and we had to go and see Steven Spielberg, and walked into his office and he had a big TV there and he wanted to show us something on the TV, but unfortunately the bottom corner of it was green and the image was all distorted, and he said, "Apologise, we've got this here." And my 16-year-old son said, "Mr. Spielberg, I think I know the trouble," because he noticed that right beside this screen was a big speaker with obviously a big magnet in it, and apparently, I'm not technological, but a magnet on a television screen in those days, it's probably different today, distorted the image, and so Andrew moved the speaker away, and Steven's picture was restored.
And he's dedicated every Oscar to you and your son ever since then.
Oh, I know about that, but anyway.
You are awarded your Lawrie Smith AM,
Exactly.
landscape architect. Thank you so much for creating the gorgeous gardens at Expo 88 and contributing to a legacy that we enjoy to this day.
Yeah.
Are you free at 12:30 on Monday, Lawrie?
Oh, I sure will be. Yes, I'd like to come.
Will you come?
I will. I will.
Excellent,
yeah, okay.
excellent. There you go. There we have it. Oh my goodness, the studio audience is going wild. Lawrie Lawrence, you'll have your chance to meet the man who created the gardens at Expo 88 if you come along to our outside broadcast 12:30 at the new Flow State stages
Right.
up at the Maritime Museum end of South Bank. Lawrie, superstar producer Annie Papalato will hook you up with all of the fine details.
Wonderful.
But it's been such a pleasure chatting with you.
Oh, it's been wonderful. Thank you very much, Kat.
I look forward to seeing you on Monday.
I'll be there.
All right.